Okay, hello and welcome to the Parsha class, Parshat Vayechi, 5783, the last Parsha in Sefer Bereshit, and this is a very special time to learn. We're about to start the period known as Shovavim, time for Teshuvah and fixing things. Also, we just got out of the holiday season and about to embark upon a new holiday season of Purim coming up and Pesach. A lot of beautiful things coming up. These next few months. So, quick summary of the Parsha Vayechi. So, like I said, the last Parsha in Bereshit, Yaakov knows he's dying, so he calls over Yosef and his two sons, Menashe and Efrayim, blesses them. He makes Yosef promise to bury him in the Eretz Yisrael, in the Holy Land, and later on also Yosef does the same for his brothers, that he has them promise to bury him in Eretz Yisrael. Yaakov gives blessings to Yosef's sons, and then to Yosef's other brothers. All 12 tribes are blessed, and then Yaakov dies. After which time he is mourned very much in the land of Israel, in the land of Egypt, brought to Israel, buried there, and then the brothers are concerned that Yosef will somehow take revenge now that the father is out of the way. And he does the exact opposite. He reassures them, and then when he passes away, as I said before, he wants to be buried in Israel, but he's not. Instead, his body is placed in the Nile River, and we'll get probably in Sefer Shemot, we'll learn more about what happens then. And that is how the Parsha concludes. And now that we have a sort of nutshell, a very short version of the Parsha, now is a good time to get right into the sources themselves and a deeper dive into the parsha. So let's begin with at the beginning. Yeah. So that's interesting. I've seen that before. Oh, I see. Just a moment here. So a lot of things to move around. There we go. That's better. Just a moment. Let me see if I can fix this. There we go. Both. It's weird. Never seen that. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Just wanted to make sure you had the English for your perusal as well. All right. So the part of the promise that Yaakov makes Yosef swear that he's going to be buried is V'shachanti im avotai, and I will lie down with my fathers. Satani mimitzrayim, so take me up to Mitzrayim. Ukvartani b'kvuratam, and bury me with them in their burial places. In other words, in Marta Machpelah. And he replied, in other words, Yosef said, I'll do as you said. He said, no, that's not enough. Swear to me. And he swore to him. That's when Yisrael bowed down to the head of the bed. The question we're going to start with is, why is it that he makes him swear that he's going to do this? It seems very, very important to Yaakov to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It's a nice thing. It's, many people want to be buried there. There's nothing wrong with that. But the question we have to ask ourselves is, why is it so important that he's willing to he makes his son swear he's going to do it. It's not enough that he asks him to, and by the way, he asks him several times, and he agrees to do it several times. He makes a very big point about it. So this is very important. And as I alluded to before, Yosef himself wants to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. Why is that such an important thing? It's not, it's not. Many of us, like I said, many people do it, but it's not, it's not the most important mitzvah in the world that you're supposed to like turn the whole world over just to make sure that this happens. So the Gemara in Ketubot asks the same question. Why is it so important that he be buried there? Take me out from Egypt and bury me in the same where they were born. Amar Karna Dvarim Bugo. Sorry, give me a second. These sources keep popping up. There we go. So he says there's a reason for this. Karna says there's a reason for why they wanted him. Yodea haya Yaakov avinu shetzadik gamor haya. Yaakov knew he was a tzadik gamor. Im meitim shebechutza la'aretz chaim. And when the dead come back to life in Chutz La'aretz, outside of Israel, which he was sure he was going to be because he knew he was a tzaddik, right? So he was going to have Tchiyat HaMeitim, which is one of the core beliefs of Judaism, is that at some point in the future we will all have the opportunity to be alive again, whatever that means. That's not for now, but he knew that. That's actually the Gemara there in Ketubot is one of the sources for this idea. If you're curious, it's on page 111a at Ketubot. So if he knows that he's going to come back to life, Lama hitriach et banav. Why is he bothering his sons to swear that they're going to bury him? Shema. So he says, Shema lo yiska lemechilot. Perhaps he won't be. Perhaps he won't have mechilot. What are mechilot? Mechilot are tunnels. In other words, the idea that the Gemara is saying is that if you have Tchiyat HaMeitim, what happens is you're going to have life again. You're going to have reincarnation, or so, I don't know, not reincarnation, that's not the right word, but you'll come back to life, yeah? And it won't be like in a zombie movie where you'll just be wandering around small towns scaring people. This new life is going to happen in Israel. All the Jewish people, all the tzaddikim are going to be in Israel. So if that's the case, he knows he's going to be one of these people. So what's going to happen is he might not have tunnels. In other words, he'll have a difficult travel to Israel in his new life. In other words, the idea is sort of like will be sort of people buried outside of Israel that will have to be like drilled through the ground to get to Israel, instead of having an already pre-drilled hole for them to travel through. They'll have to sort of like their own bodies will be in some sort of pain to get to Israel. Kayotza davar amar omer ata omer v'yishba Yosef et bnei Yisrael. That's the same reason why Yosef made the Bnei Yisrael promise to bury him in Israel. Amar Rab Chanina devarim b'go. There has to be an inner meaning to all this. Yedea haya Yosef ba'atzma shetzadik gamor haya. He knew that he was a tzaddik. So what's he worried about? Im ametim b'chutz la'aretz chaim. When the dead come back to life outside of Israel, lama hitriach et achav arba meot parsa. So why is he trouble his brothers to carry him these 400 parsot, which is a certain distance from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael. Shama lu yiske lemechilot. For the same reason, he was also concerned that he wouldn't deserve these tunnels. In other words, so all of this is actually, if you think about it, it's mind blowing. We're talking about they had such belief in Tchiyat HaMeitim that they would come back to life. This is such a core belief for them that they were willing to turn heaven and earth upside down to make sure that people would bury them in Israel, because they knew that a burial outside of Israel is going to cause them some sort of pain. Now, what kind of pain? How much pain? Will it be physical, spiritual? This isn't the time for this kind of discussion. I don't actually know. We're not really given that kind of information. But what is clear is that there will be some sort of pain. And if you believe in the words of Chazal that there's such a thing, then you should be a little concerned if you're buried anywhere outside of Israel. That's the idea, and that's why so many people try so hard to be buried in Israel for that reason. All right, let's keep going. So this is then Yosef is told that his father is sick. Not sick. When his father's ill, he's sick. It says in Mem Chet Amud Pasuk Aleph, so 48:1. But he achrei hadvarim ha'ela. This is after all the blessings that his sons received, Menashe and Efrayim, Hamalach HaGol, all that stuff. It says, no, actually, take that back. His sons did not get that blessing yet. This is after he made the promise to bury his father there. It says, Vayomer Yosef, Hine avicha choleh, your father is sick. Vikach et shnei banav imo, he took his two sons with him, et Menashe vet Efrayim. Now it says in the Midrash, in Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, that this is an interesting discussion. It says that when most people in general didn't know that they were sick. This is a famous idea. Yaakov was the first person in history to look old. I'm not sure what a compliment it was. We've seen last week's Parsha when Pharaoh saw him and said, how many years have you lived? Like you're such an old-looking person. He's the first person to look old. So, and the reason that was done is that he needed to know when he was going to die. He asked to know when he was going to die in order to bless the Jewish people. And that's why, by the way, this is the source. When he hears somebody sneeze, he should say, Gesundheit, or la briut, or something. It should be healthy, right? Because so because before that time, whenever somebody was going to die, they didn't have advanced knowledge of that. Their only advanced knowledge was that they were going to sneeze or whatever, and that sneeze, and then they died. They didn't have any advanced knowledge that they were sick or that they were dying. That's a midrash in Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer 52:6. You can look it up there. So based on that, writes Rabbi Yisachar Fran. It's a kind of a long source, but it's all English, and it's an essay he titles "The Precious Final Moments." The messenger came from Goshen and reported to Yosef, "Behold, your father is sick." You would have seen that this was a fairly commonplace message, especially regarding elderly people. But in actuality, it was a remarkable statement, an unheard of statement. According to Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, that's the source we just read, there had never been illness in the world before this time. Death never came as the culmination of a long illness. A person would be fit as a fiddle one moment and dead the next. He would just sneeze and his soul would depart through his nostrils. That's what you read. Okay. Yaakov, however, prayed to Hashem that people should become ill, that they should have some inkling that death is imminent. Please do not take my soul, he prayed, before I have the opportunity to leave instructions for my children and my household. Hashem accepted Yaakov's prayer. He became sick, and the messenger came to report to Yosef about the amazing thing that happened in Goshen. Behold, your father is sick. It was sensational news. So he continues, Rabbi Fran continues. That was all basically what we saw inside. He writes, I once heard a radio newscaster comment on an air disaster. Thank heaven they never knew what hit him. When a bomb goes off on an aircraft at 30,000 feet, there's no time to think. You're just dead in an instant. They never had a chance to think, yikes, I'm about to die. They were spared the pain and anguish of looking death in the face, boom, and they were dead just like that. Well, he writes, I suppose that is one way of looking at it, but it is not the Jewish way. The Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer describes the Jewish way. Terminal diseases may be painful, but at least they give a person a warning that he's about to depart from this world. He's forewarned that he must tie up loose ends. A person leaving, and by the way, that's what happens in the Haftorah with David HaMelech. That's the theme of the Haftorah. A person leaving this world must make a cheshbon hanefesh, taking spiritual stock of his life, what he has accomplished, what he has failed to accomplish. He must do teshuvah for his transgressions and shortcomings and prepare his soul for the next world. He must review all his outstanding obligations and make sure he has discarded them properly. He must leave instructions to his children and his household. He must make sure he is not leaving a mess for someone else to clean up. A lifetime of activity calls for a lot of wrapping up. A person who is struck by a bus and never knows what hit him will never have the opportunity to bring his life to a fitting conclusion. He misses out on a very great blessing. When the Challenger shuttle exploded, there was much speculation about whether the crew members were aware that they were about to die. When they finally found the tapes, they heard some of them say, uh-oh, this caused a great uproar. Their attorneys wanted to sue NASA for the additional trauma of their having known about the impending disaster. Does it necessarily follow, wrote a Gentile columnist at the time, that it would have been more merciful than death, that death comes so instantaneously that the final conscious emotion was a sense of exhilaration? Or does such an end rob a person of the right to reflect, even if only for a few precious moments, on those things that make life worth living? For those who believe that death is the end, blissful ignorance at the moment of death is perhaps preferable to a few moments of agony. But for those who believe in the immortality of the soul, as we do, in punishment and reward in the next world, in an eternal afterlife, a few precious moments of preparation are priceless indeed. All right, so that's Rabbi Friend on the Parsha there. And again, the point is, it's not just random that Yaakov prayed for people to know when they were sick, when they were dying. We want people to be able to live a proper life, and to do that, we need to have a great understanding of what it is that life is about, and a sort of a vision of what we want our afterlife to be like. We believe in an afterlife, and so there's what to do to make sure that it goes off correctly. Okay, let's get to the famous blessing of Menashe and Efrayim. This is the crisscrossing of Yaakov's hands. V'yishlach Yisrael et yemino, v'yeshet et al rosh Ephraim. He sent out his right hand and he put it on Ephraim, who's a second-born. Right hand, meaning the more powerful hand, should be going on the firstborn, right? V'hu hatzeir, he is the younger son. V'et smolo al rosh Menashe, and he put his left hand on the head of Menashe. Sikel, and we're going to remember Menashe is the firstborn. Sikel et yadav, so some word seichel, right? He aimed his hand properly with seichel. Ki Menashe habechor, because Menashe is the firstborn. What are we saying? He moved his right hand properly because Menashe is the firstborn. He put his left hand on him. That's properly. That's improperly. We should say he did it without seichel, lo sikel. What does it mean that he did it with wisdom? So this is, by the way, in Bereshit 48:14. The Or HaChaim of Morocco explains. So he first has a problem with the word ki, as we just did, because ki usually means because, and it sounds like he did this, he made this decision because Menashe is the firstborn, which doesn't sound like the right thing to do. So Amar Tevat ki, it says the word ki because V'hu tam lehefek. It seems like it should be the opposite, right? Yesh leperushu al zeh haderech. He quotes basically saying that this. He's basically paraphrasing Rashi. Rashi says, "Ki Menashe b'chor af al pk." He put his hand on Menashe, the firstborn, even though he's the firstborn. The key means the key, which usually means because. Here, because turns into even though, which is what Rashi says. Now, that could be the answer, but there's a problem saying that because after all, that's not what key usually means. Because doesn't usually mean even though. So how do we understand this? Hanachon be'enehu lefi ma shekadam hakatuv lodia. He says it seems to me the correct answer. The correct answer is based on what it says, based on what the Torah tells us earlier. And what does the Torah tell us? It says, Ki einei Yisrael kabdu mizoken. Because he was older, his eyes became heavy. In other words, it was hard for him to see. V'lo yuchal hakir mihu habachor mihu hatzayir. He obviously couldn't see who was the firstborn and who was the secondborn. Lezeh and now that he wants to bless them, Dan bedato ki ha-meseder yisadreim b'derech mosari la'asot. So he had to figure out with his wisdom where the firstborn was going to be placed and where the secondborn was going to be placed. Right? In other words, he knew the wisdom that he's using is with his eyes closed, he knew where the firstborn was going to be. He knew that the firstborn would be close to his right hand. He knew that the secondborn would be placed next to his left hand. And that's why he crisscrossed with wisdom, knowing where they were going to be, even though he doesn't see them. This spatial intelligence is what we're talking about here, that he knew that Yosef would place his sons the way he did, and he indeed did. And that's the wisdom of Yaakov, knowing that nevertheless, even though they're placed where they are, he had to crisscross his hands to do this correctly. All right, we're going to go on from there to the actual blessing that they received. Chapter 48 still, verse 16. The famous prayer, the famous song. We say it once a day, at least in the Shema. Some people say V'itin Lecha, it says Hamalach. On Simchat Torah, we say it after the Kol Hanarim Aliyah. Anyway, it says Hamalach Hagol Otim Mikol Ra, the angel who saved me from all evil, from all bad. Yivarach et Hanarim, should bless these children. V'Yikarav Shemi, and should place my name on them. V'Shem Avotai, and the names of my fathers, Avraham, Yitzchak. Obviously, he's not going to call himself. He's not his father. V'yidgu l'rov b'kerav ha'aretz, and they should grow. V'yidgu from the word dag, fish. They should be multiplying like fish, in the midst of the land. B'kerav ha'aretz, not just ha'aretz, and that's what our next comment is going to be asking a question about. The Kli Yakar ask the question. B'kerav ha'aretz, hayu lomar ba'aretz. The verse would make 100% complete sense. The same exact verse, word for word, would make complete sense just using the word ha'aretz, without b'kerav ha'aretz. So why are we using this fancy language, b'kerav ha'aretz? And the answer is very simple. Mahu b'kerav ha'aretz. Nir lefarish al derech sharazal. He's going to explain this based on what it says in the Gemara in Sota 11b. Shayu mitzrim chorshim al gabam nasalahem neis nivlu b'karka chule. It says in the Gemara there that the Egyptians always wanted to kill the Jews while they were giving birth, while they were having their babies in Mitzrayim. So, and they would kill these children, but later these children would come back when miraculously they would sink into the ground. Then they would come back. And then they would the Egyptians would try to plow up the ground so that the Jewish children, babies, wouldn't be able to be hidden there. And that's what but they weren't able to get them because they were even deeper and deeper into the ground. So the Egyptians weren't able to kill them. But what does it mean? They were in the land itself, literally, physically in the land. So this fits with this agadita in Sota, this blessing that they should have many children that are in the land. In other words, just as the Jewish children were born miraculously in Mitzrayim, and they were hidden in the ground, and the Mitzrayim were not able to get them. So to here, you've got this idea. B'kerev haaretz alludes to that idea. All right, let's go from there to a very, very important idea, beautiful idea, in fact, if I may say so. We're going to get to the blessings that Yaakov gives to his sons themselves, and we're going to start with the blessing that he gives. And every year so far, we've been lucky enough. If you want to look at the past videos on YouTube, you'll see we've tried to explain the different blessings to different sons in various ways. Today, we're going to focus on the blessing that he gave, or curse that he gave, Shimon and Levi. So he said, remember, Shimon and Levi massacred, let's call it, the entire city of Shechem after Shechem raped their sister Dinah. And they did it kind of in a tricky way, right? They told them, if you have a Brit Milah, maybe we'll marry into you. And they went and had the Brit Milah. And on the third day, on the most painful day, they came and slaughtered the entire town. So without getting into whether that was correct or not, we spoke about that back in Parshat Vayishlach. And not just this year. We've spoken about it several times. But in his blessing to them, or curse, it says, Arur apam, cursed be their anger. Ki az bi'avratam, ki kashta achalkem bi'Yaakov, afitzem bi'Yisrael. So their anger is never ending. I'm going to divide them, right? Achalka, from the word chelek, I will divide them in Yaakov, v'afitzem bi'Yisrael. And afitzem, and I'm going to scatter them around like seeds in Israel. Israel meaning also another word for Yaakov, another name for Yaakov. Rashi explains, what does it mean that I'm going to split them up? Achalkim b'Yaakov. Afridem zeh, I need to keep the two of them separate. Like they're bad chemistry together, right? They're nice boys by themselves, but when they get together, they're not so great. I'm sure some of you have that experience with your children. Some of them are angels when they're alone, but they quite the opposite when they get together with their siblings. Afridem zemiz, I'm going to separate them. Shelo yehei levi leminyan hashvatim, and the way he did that, the way he separated them, practically speaking, the way Hashem separated them, is that Levi never had a portion of land. He had to be amongst all the tribes. And that way they kept separate. Davar acher, here's another explanation. Rashi gives two explanations to what it means that they were split up. Davar acher, ein lecha aniyim v'sofrim mitalmidei tikona tinokot ela b'Shimon. What it means is that Shimon is going to be the poor and the writers and the not just writers like poetry, writers of Torah books and the teachers of school children. Kedei sheyu nefutzim v'shiftu shel Levi asui mechazer al granon v'trumot v'masod natan lo tfutzato derech kavod. So in other words, Shimon is going to be the teachers, the writers, etc., and Levi is going to have to get tzedakah money, and that's going to keep them separate from Shimon. Okay. We just said, by the way, that because they're so violent and because they're so nasty in how they dealt with Shem, their curse is that they should be separated. And how are they going to be separated? Shimon is going to be the school teachers. Did you hear that? The school teachers. It sounds like, and Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky and Emet Yaakov brings this up. Perish Rashi Zal in Lechanim v'Sofrim Talmidei Tinokot Ele Shimon. That so many of the teachers of the Jewish people come from Shimon. Ayin b'chedusha el Pashat Vayishlach. He explains in Vayishlach, and he does here as well. Shebevada kan onesh neged Shimon v'Levi. There's a punishment for Shimon and Levi. Mikol makom bedavka mina Yaakov et hashvatim ela letaf kidam nalim elu shel chinuch mabanim shmirat tashmishe kedusha. You're going to make them the teachers of our children? These violent guys, these liars. Why should they be the teachers? They should be separated from children. How does this make any sense? Ki Rak Shimon v'Levi haru al haknuot v'nidrashet shel hachzonu yasa et achotenu. They were kinoim. They were zealous for their sister. Right? We all have a certain degree of zealotry. Right? There's some things we get very excited by. Right? They got excited. They became angered by the fact that there was some sort of injustice done regarding their sister. They just let it go, and they went to war for her. Says Rav Kamenetsky, Rak Heim Kuru Achi Dina, and that's why they're called, nobody else, only they're called the brothers of Dina, even though she has a good number of other brothers. They were willing to give up their life for her. They didn't know they were going to be successful. It wasn't a given. They came in there, 2 people against an entire town. Happens to be, God blessed their strategy, and somehow they were successful. But it didn't have to go that way. There could have been a fight back, and as we said back in Parshat Vayishlach, there was a little bit of a fight. By the way, I'm not going to get into that now. Kedei lahatzliach v'meshimot ke'elu muchrachin limnot anashim sheyesh bahem midat ha'pnayut v'hamasirot nefesh la'Hashem adorato. You know what kind of people we need to have be our teachers, the teachers of our children? We need the people who've got the fire going inside them, who are ready to give up their lives for Hashem. We need kanoim. We need people who are zealous. You want to teach somebody Torah and you don't care about Torah yourself? It's going to be very dull. You're not going to inspire any future generation to keep Judaism going if your Torah is just, Abraham said to Hashem, I will do as you said. See that, children? That's what happens. You need to give them, you need to inspire them. So a lot of stories I've heard of teachers who can inspire people. Mendel Kaplan was a great teacher, a student of the Mir who started teaching in the Philadelphia Yeshiva, taught many people who would later go on to become Gedolim themselves, Rabbi Beryl Wein and Rav Chaim Fassman and others. And one of the things that he was famous for was just being inspired. he he inspired others because he was inspired. He had the fire going inside his heart. He was ready to do anything for Torah. When you're ready to do like that, when you care that much about Hashem, you're going to inspire more people to do great things. He goes on. There's more to the essay. I cut it off early because I could, but just so you know, he has more to say on the subject. He brings in other places where this is true, where people are inspirational if they are inspired themselves. So Shimon and Levi, they were inspired. They were willing to risk their lives for Dina. So too, their descendants are willing to risk their lives for their students. They give up everything to be good teachers. All right, so let's skip to the bracha for Yehuda. 49:10. By the way, that verse was 49:7. 3 verses later, we've got the blessing for Yehuda, and this is a famous one. I think we've spoken about this in other contexts in the past. Lo yasur shevet mi Yehuda, the shevet, the scepter will not leave Yehuda. Mechokek meben raglav, and his chokek, it's another kind of stick usually used for hitting, for punishment, etc. So that's never going to leave his feet. Ad ki yavo Shilo v'lo yikhat amim. Until Shiloh comes, or Safari translates it as tribute. Most commentaries seem to understand it, Rashi included, seem to understand this as meaning when Mashiach comes, everything will be as it should be. But regardless, it seems like the shevet, the scepter, should not leave him, and the chokek, this other stick, should not leave between his feet. What are we talking about here? So to begin to understand this, we need to know that the Gemara in Sanhedrin 5a talks about this verse. It says there, Lo Yisur Shevet Yehuda Elu Rashe Galiyut Shebevavel. The Shevet from Yehuda are the tribal leader, the Rosh Galuta, the person, the governor of the Jewish people in exile, back in the time of Babylonia. So that's always going to come from Yehuda, is what the Gemara says this prediction means. They ruled the Jewish people with the shevet, with the scepter. And the chokek from between his feet, elu b'nei b'nav shel Hillel. These are the sons of Hillel. Shemelamdin Torah b'rabim. These are the ones who taught Torah to the masses. Hillel also comes from Yehuda, and his children, obviously, and grandchildren also come from Yehuda. Therefore, it's this separate sort of group of people who are going to lead the Jewish people in a different way. We've got the people who are going to lead sort of politically. That's the governor, and we've got the people who are going to lead the Jewish people by Torah, by example, and that's the teachers. In Chidusha Hagriz, written by Rabbi Yitzchak Zev Soloveitchik, the Brisker Rav, right? So he says there, it starts with Vayechi, and it says there, Lo Yisro Shevet Yehuda, he quotes this verse, so why did the verse change its language from Yehuda to between his feet? Hello, ben Raglav Gamkin Bekavana Mizera Yehuda. Between his feet should also come from Yehuda. They're both from Yehuda. What does it mean from your feet? He quotes the Gemara in Sanhedrin that we just quoted. And it's apparently in the Gemara in Horiot 11 as well. That's the governors. And this Shevet, so the chokek from the between the feet, that is regarding Hillel. He continues as Chen Isa Barambam. This you can also see this in the Rambam. Nasiya Eretz Yisrael Asher Lerdod b'maklot. Says the Rambam writes that the 1 second, yeah. So the Rambam writes that the leader of the Jewish people, Rambam Hilchot Malachim Ktav, the Nasi Hayinu Melech, this Nasi, the person who leads the Jewish people, even as a governor, he becomes a Melech. What do we call? We say Melech is a king, but it doesn't have to be a king. It could be a Nasi, it could be a governor, it could be a president, it could be in a sense a king. Vita Barambam Hilchot Sanhedrin. You can see this in other Rambams. By the way, the Soloveitchiks, the Briskers, are very famous for how for their expertise in sort of divvying up Rambams, right? The different teachings of Maimonides, and making them all make sense together. They bring sources from all over the place, and eventually come up with a cogent, consistent idea of what they're saying. V'Rav Safra, Behuriot Sham. What am I looking for? 1 moment. Okay, b'shevet. So when it says shevet, and then that's really our question, because we've got a shevet and we've got a mechokek. We got a shevet, which is a kind of stick, and a chokek, it's a different kind of stick, and it's one's in Yehuda, one's in Yehuda's feet, whatever that means. So we want to understand what this means. So b'shevet rosh gola hascharim. So obviously, as was normal until quite recently, the leaders of the Jewish people, the governors, were male, right? And that's what it means, shevet. Shevet means the governors, meaning the males. Okay? Male leaders. Ben achar ben, the son after the son. Mechokek nasi shebe'eretz Yisrael mikevot. The nasi has to come from, should come from Yehuda too, but doesn't have to come from Yehuda by patrilineal descent. It could be that his mother's ancestors were Yehuda. Ayin Sham. Look over there. Im Kain, Shtei Hanisiot, Hem, Zera Yehuda. There's two different lines of this leadership that comes from Yehuda. Ela the Shevet Dafka Ben Achar Ben. It could be the Shevet, which, by the way, doesn't only mean the scepter, it also means tribe. And we know tribe goes by patrilineal descent. If your father is a Levi, then you are a Levi. If your mother's a Levi, you're not necessarily, unless your father is. Back to that again. Umechokek hu Rosh Sanhedrin. And the Mechokek refers to the head of the court, as we said before, Hillel and his sons. Afilu Rakmi Habanot Yehuda. Mibnot Yehuda. It could also come from the daughters of Yehuda. Not that the daughters are sitting in the Sanhedrin, but that the daughters are the descendants of Yehuda, whose children are going to be leading the Sanhedrin. Im Kain, Yeshlomar the Zehu Kavanat Hakra. That's what it means here in this verse. Lo Yisod Shevet Mi Yehuda. The Shevet, the tribe, the scepter, the male aspect of Yehuda always has to come from Yehuda for them to be the king or the Nasi, right? Hainu imhu mishevet Yehuda, hainu ben achar ben. Umit yaches l'shevet Yehuda. He has yichus from Shevet Yehuda. He has the genealogy that he comes from Yehuda from his father's side. Aval mechokek mi ben raglav. But the stick to be taken from between his feet, I know afilu im kvar enu mishevet Yehuda de aviv. Even if your father is not from the tribe of Yehuda, mishevet acher, and from another tribe, Dehu mityaches l'shevet acher, and you have yichus, you have genealogy that goes to another tribe according to your shevet, right? Your mother is from Yehuda, but your father is from Binyamin, so you are from the tribe of Binyamin. Mikom makom im yotze mechalitza of the hainu bevat Yehuda, if you are worthy of this greatness, and your mother comes from Yehuda, gam ken yachol liyot rosh hasanedrin. You can also be the head of the court. In other words, due to the merits of your mother and her yichus, her genealogy. So there you have a very beautiful sort of explanation based on different Rambams from all over the place of what this verse means, why we're talking about different sticks in different places, different parts of Yehuda. It all has to do with whether your genealogy back to Yehuda is matrilineal or patrilineal. All right, let's get to the end of the blessings, the end of Yaakov's blessings to his sons. Mem Tet Lamed Gimel 49:33. V'yichal Yaakov litzavot et banav Yosef raglav al el hamita. He finished saying what he needed to say. He pulled his feet up to his bed. V'yigva v'yesef el amav, and he was gathered to his people, which is another way of saying he passed away. We've said in previous contexts that in previous classes that this is also a reference, one of the many references in this week's parsha, to the idea of there being a heaven. It doesn't really say that or that there's a life after death. It doesn't really say that explicitly in the Torah, but it's one of our 13 core beliefs. And this idea here that he's gathered to his people. No, he's not. Where's his people? His people aren't around him. He's dead. So it means that his people are with him, in other words, in this afterlife. But that's not for now. Right now, what I'd like to point out is the Gemara in Ta'anit, famous Gemara. And I have the source here, but I don't think we need to look at it too deeply. It's talking there about, it says, I'll just show you these four words here. Yaakov Avinu lo meit. Yaakov, our father, didn't die. I'm sorry. Gemara, Ta'anit 5b. You read the verse the same way I did, right? Yaakov finished giving his instructions. He drew up his feet, breathed his last breath, and died. He was gathered to his people. Sounds like he's dead. And then we have other verses later on in the Torah where he's being, embalmed, etc., buried. So I for his sake, I hope he's dead, right? It doesn't sound like a good idea to be buried alive. So what's the Gemara saying here? To begin to understand, we need to look at another Gemara. The Gemara in Ketubot writes, and it's talking about Rebbe here, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, who wrote the Mishnah. B'shad pirato shel Rabbi Zakav Aser Etzbotav Klape Mala. He took his 10 fingers, he pointed them out into the air. This is, by the way, Rebbe, who was very humble and also had a lot of wealth. Amar, he said, Ribbona Shel Olam, Master of the universe, Galu v'yadua lefanech. It's clear and known to you. Sheyigato be'eser etzbotav b'Torah. My fingers were used for Torah only. I didn't even get benefit from this world, even to my small finger. I should have peace in my rest. So in this Gemara in Ketubot 104a, you have this idea that Rebbe also, when he died, he left the world without any benefit. It says elsewhere in the Gemara, the Rebbe lo meit, the Rebbe didn't die. We see he did. So what's going on? So writes Rav Tzadok HaKohen in Tzidkat HaTzadik, 262. It's a long piece, but basically he talks about human nature. Human nature is to want to get pleasure from this world. It's normal, natural, perhaps even healthy. It might be unhealthy to do otherwise for most people. But for great tzaddikim, it's not unusual. And as he writes here, I just it's a long piece, but I underlined the important thing, relevant to us. The be'emet lo mate, the fact that Yaakov didn't die, nira dehu haya naki be'emet, the gamri kol yama. He was true all his days, just like Rebbe died, and he was able to testify about himself that I did nothing wrong with these 10 fingers. I was always using them only for Torah. So too, when Yaakov, quote unquote, died or didn't die, what we mean to say is he didn't benefit from this world. Right? This is only possible through Torah, through this kind of righteousness, this tzidkat tzaddik, as the book implies, is all about how to be righteous, how to be a tzaddik. And what he's saying here is that what a person needs to do if they want to die, the kind of death of Yaakov or Rebbe, where their death is not even a death because their life was so pure to begin with. There's no, there's barely a transfer from this world to the next. They're already spiritual beings, more or less. So yeah, physically he died, but spiritually he was always alive. He lived his life without care for the physical world. And of course, this is a high level. This is not something I would recommend for most ordinary people. Like I said before, it might not be healthy. All right, last piece for today. We're gonna go to the Talmud Dekra, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Zecher Tzadok Levracha. Since he passed away, as I've pointed out before, I tried to include his Torah thoughts on a more or less almost weekly basis. So he writes in Talmud Dekra, in one of the last verses in the Parsha, it says, V'yavru yimei v'chito. So he was mourning the death of his father Yaakov. Then Yosef's days of mourning were almost over. Daber Yosef el beit Paro lemor, and he said to the house of Paro, saying, Im na matzatichen beinecha dabru na ba'aznei Paro lemor. Please let me speak to the ears of Paro. Please send this to Paro. And then he basically asks for permission to bury Yaakov in Israel, as he was sworn to do. So Rav Chaim asks a question. L'chora lama haya tzarich Yosef l'shluchim litol reshut l'tzeit v'lo diber ba'atzmo im Paro. Why is it that he has to ask someone else? What does it say? Beit Paro, right? It says, when Vaydaber Yosef el Beit Paro, he's speaking to the house of Paro, that they should intercede with Paro to let him speak with him, to send a message to him. But why not just go up to Paro and talk to him? You're the second in command. You've spoken to Paro many, many times in previous parshiot. So why does he need to now talk to Beit Paro? And this answer shows a few things about Rav Chaim and how he thinks, which is what I like to do when I read these kinds of commentaries. I like to try to think, why is it? What is the author trying to? What can we learn about the author? What can we learn about Rav Chaim while we're on the subject of learning Torah? Right? Rav Chaim had a pure, clear grasp of the entire Torah. Right? He made a siyum every year in the entire Torah. Right? So he writes here, Shamati b'shem Avi Mori. So in the name of his father, he heard it in the name of his father, the disciple Gon. this answer. Yosef Yada, Yosef knew. Shapar Yomar Lo Shezeh Bilti if of Afrashi Yazov et Mitzrayim Af B'Shah Kala. I can't let you leave Egypt even for a short time. Why? Ki hakol yitmotet v'yicharev im Yosef yader ki hu levado lo mesugal lenahal l'chalkel et Mitzrayim. So he's afraid that that if Yosef leaves even for a short time, everything in all the success that Egypt has been having has been faring through this trying time will all go backwards. So it won't make Egypt great again, right? So it's gonna be all turned back, and everything's gonna go bad. So he can't ask him himself because Pharaoh is going to say no. So how is he going to get out of Egypt? That's why he sent messengers. In front of strangers. This guy, Pharaoh, is not going to say that Yosef made Mitzrayim great. He's not going to admit that he's not an effective, efficient leader, that Yosef is the one who's been, carrying the day. He's not going to say that in front of strangers, in front of messengers. Therefore, he asked messengers to send this to relay this message, so that Pharaoh won't have this excuse because he'd be embarrassed to say otherwise. So he's going to eventually say, as he did, that if this is what you want, and this is indeed what Yosef wanted, and indeed, then that's what you should do. You should go and bury your father in Eretz Yisrael, and that's what Yosef goes to do. And with that, ends the parsha and ends Sefer Bereshit with the burial of Yaakov, and of course the continued legacy of his sons as they continue to live in Mitzrayim. And we'll hear more about that in next week's parsha, God willing, in Parshat Shemot. Thank you very much. I encourage you, if you have the opportunity, to click on the other videos that we have, and to see maybe previous years of this parsha class, if you have the time. We do cover all kinds of other verses and other ideas that I think are very worthwhile to listen to and to absorb. I wish you have a good week, and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Take care.